Why is it important to fund my revocable living trust? What does funding even mean? Funding is the process where you retitle your assets into your trust. You create the trust, and then let's say you own a piece of real property, your house. You file a deed that says, I, Kelly Balamuth, am giving my house to myself as trustee of my trust. And you file that with the recorder's office. Now the county knows that your trust owns your real property. You do the same things with bank and brokerage accounts, anything that's being retitled into the trust. It's just a matter of taking it out of your name and putting it into your name as trustee of your trust. So when we're talking about a revocable living trust, why is it important to move your assets in there? Let's talk about that. There's several reasons. The first reason is to avoid probate. One of the main reasons that people create a revocable trust is so that when they die, their assets will avoid the probate process, which is a long and expensive court process. Assets that fall outside of your trust may have to go through probate. Assets that are titled to your trust avoid probate because the trust is a private document that doesn't have to go through the court process in order to retitle your assets when you die. So the first and main reason why it's important to fund your revocable trust is so that you can actually avoid probate. Another reason is so that the trust can do its job appropriately. The trust says how to retitle assets when you die. Assets that aren't titled to your trust may not be able to be retitled the way that the trust directs. Another reason is management during your potential incapacity. So whereas a will is something that helps you when you die, a will is only worthwhile when you die. Until you do, it's a worthless stack of papers. A trust, on the other hand, supports you when you die. It says what happens to your assets, but also while you're alive, if you become incapacitated, it can support you as well. Because you've picked a successor trustee that can step in to manage the trust during your incapacity. That trustee will be able to manage whatever assets are in the trust. So you want to make sure that the assets that you want there and available to support you while you're alive are titled to your revocable trust. Transferring your assets to your trust can clarify the ownership of them. It makes it clear that they're owned by your trust as opposed to owned by you personally. And this can be helpful in the future with creditors or potential divorce, that sort of thing. Assets that are titled to a trust can also help to protect beneficiaries of the trust. Oftentimes, folks don't want to leave their assets directly to their children because maybe they're too young. They'd like them to be held in trust for their children's benefit. In order to hold the assets for your child's benefit in a trust, as opposed to giving it to them directly, the asset must be held in the trust. So it's another reason why it's important to get your assets in there. And the final reason that you want to make sure your assets are in your trust is to ensure continuous management, so that if you were to become incapacitated or die, somebody can step right in and the assets can continue to be managed without any break in continuity. So the interesting thing about creating a revocable trust is, in my opinion, the most important part that happens in creating the trust happens after you create it. Because creating it, you just have an empty trust. It's not going to do anything unless you move assets into it. And that's why funding your trust is the most important step to having a trust that'll work. If you'd like to chat more about this, I'd be happy to. Give me a call.